With all of the warnings of the recalls, catastrophic failures, engines blowing up, I can't believe people are still buying some of these very popular vehicles. Like they say, you can't fix stupid, and on top of it, I'm going to share the list of the 8 worst vehicles that I still can't believe people are buying in 2026. Let's get into it now.
Life's too short to drive boring cars.
One vehicle that's been traditionally very popular is the Jeep Grand Cherokee, and a lot of people like them because of their space, capacity, and the Jeep brand name, but honestly, I've never been sucked in by that. You know, I had a Wrangler years ago and I enjoyed it, but that was back with the 4-liter inline-6 manual gearbox when Jeep was simple, when it was designed to be that way. But things have changed. Now the worst Jeep you can possibly imagine, and I can't believe people are buying these, it blows my mind, is the Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe. A 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine made it up to an electric drive with one electric motor to create a combined output of 375 horsepower. I can't imagine why anyone would think a 2-liter engine would be enough to haul this big hulk of a vehicle around. But it's not just the massive size of the vehicle. It's not just the fact that it's a plug-in hybrid. I mean, all of that technology exists all over the industry. Just ask Toyota. They've been creating a lot of products that, quite honestly, they've really got it ironed out. And it's not a problem for Toyota and Honda and some of those manufacturers. But when Jeep and some of the Stellantis products gets their hand on electrification, you know there's going to be issues. Like some of the over-the-air updates. We've heard that it's literally left some of these vehicles brick. But it doesn't begin and end with the Jeep Grand Cherokee. The Wrangler also has a 4xe, which shared some of the same problems. But it's beyond that. The Jeep Grand Cherokee should be a simple, reliable, long cruiser. But it's simply not. Plug-in hybrid, all of the extra technology means there will likely be problems. And I've seen this time and time again. Have you heard about that massive recall of over 320,000 vehicles that have the potential to ignite because of some internal battery issues? They actually said you shouldn't be parking these inside of your garage. Park them away from the building. I mean, a lot of people like to keep their cars clean and dry in the middle of winter, and to think that you have to park it away from the house just because it could spontaneously combust and leave your house in charcoal briquettes? Yeah, I'm good. Another issue seems to be the 2022 to 2026, where they could just suddenly lose power. You're cruising down the road, you're going to accelerate, merge onto a freeway, and then, it shuts down. What's going on there? Well, a sudden loss of power could be doing a reset, internal reset, or the battery loses power, and that's been a potential issue as well, loss of propulsion. Honestly, they're computers, and sometimes computers crap the bed. Sometimes they just reboot, reset, glitch out, and they just don't respond. Well, that's happening with some of these. But the overall instability of the system seems to be causing all kinds of problems, and I can't believe anybody would want to get into this level of complexity. As a matter of fact, even that engine was known to have residual sand in it. That's right, it wasn't even cleaned out allegedly properly and resulted in engines that needed full replacement in some cases. I can't even believe it. It blows my mind that anybody would even want to buy a brand new Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe. Absolutely shocking. What's wrong with the older? Remember the 360 cubic inch? Give me one of those old school Hemis, drop that in there, and then you've maybe got something. Or how about something, 5.7 with a manual gearbox? Then you've got a Jeep that was intended for the Jeep loyalists. But no, instead, they try to upscale themselves, try to create a product that's trying to compete now in the luxury car segment with the likes of the BMW X5 and the Audi Q7s, and yet they fall short. Second one, not so much on the luxury side, certainly import, and it's Volkswagen. And I can't believe Volkswagen's worst model, I mean the ID4, the ID Buzz, don't even get me started. I mean, I can't even believe people are buying those personally. I mean, they're so extraordinarily expensive. And for what you get with moderate range and all kinds of a host of issues and electrified problems, why would anybody touch those? But that's actually not the most problematic vehicle in the Volkswagen lineup. It's actually the Volkswagen Taos, which is almost quite literally a dumpster fire on wheels. It was so bad, in fact, that their dual clutch gearbox that they initially came out with was swapped out because people complained it was rough, jagged, aggressive, failure prone. So they finally put in a torque converter auto, but that was too little too late. The rest of the vehicle is a catastrophic failure waiting to happen. Consumers Reports ranks Volkswagen as literally one of the worst and least reliable brands across the industry this year, and on top of it, the Taos is literally the bottom of the barrel for the brand in general. According to AutoNub, literally one of the worst vehicles for problems per 100 vehicles. Most vehicles, like Hondas and Toyotas, are in the range of 100 to 140 problems per 100 vehicles. In other words, maybe 1.5 problems per vehicle on average if you spread that that out. Well, guess what? The Volkswagen Taos is around 300. Over 3 problems per single vehicle means you're going to spend the vast majority of your days sitting in the waiting room at the shop just waiting to get your vehicle diagnosed and possibly repaired. With transmission issues and hesitations and juddering, and of course even the 1.5-liter engine that stalls out, it's a 4-cylinder engine, which really isn't a great motor. Host of issues like electrical gremlins, infotainment system troubles, massive amount of check engine lights for random issues like O2 sensors, and a lot of it is carbon fouling, and that EA211 engine is one of the literal worst for Volkswagen. Because while that 1.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine creates 158 horsepower and about 184 pound-feet of torque, it sounds like it's adequate, but honestly, it's way too small a displacement. Just remember what happened with Honda and their 1.5s? Yeah, oil and fuel dilution issues, carbon fouling, head gaskets, all big issues. Guess what? Yes, the Taos, trying to follow in Honda's footsteps. And sure, while you can get an 8-speed auto in the front-wheel drive, the all-wheel drive gives you a DSG 7-speed, neither of which are that great. It's a price point vehicle, I get it. You're not going to get the top of the line if you're buying the entry-level point. But just look at Toyota. Their Toyota Corolla is literally one of their most reliable vehicles. They didn't consider it price point. They still created a reliable vehicle that they knew that owners would own for hundreds of thousands of miles. What's going on, Volkswagen? Take one out of Toyota's book. Volkswagen's not short on their own challenges and recalls. As a matter of fact, it's just one of the most problematic models you can possibly imagine. Not just for Volkswagen, but actually for the entire industry. And while they look cute, they're in fact more trouble than they're worth, and honestly, I would just keep on keeping on, if you know what I mean. Let's get into number 3, which is the Audi Q4 E-tron. What is going on there? We know the quality issues with the electronics, the gremlins and infotainment and glitches and battery problems. Oh, yes, Audi has had more than their share of troubles, and the VAG group in general with Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche, and all of them are struggling with the advancement of electrification. We knew they were trying to jump the gun. In doing so, now they're staring down the barrel of massive profit losses. As a matter of fact, Porsche even lost 99% of their profits here last year simply because they were trying to advance it too quickly, put all of their apples in the same basket, and also overcharged for some of their premier models like the 911. It created this market gap of those that have and have not. The haves would buy a $400,000 GT3 RS, and the have-not would buy a Macan, which sadly now is being converted exclusively to electric. What was going on over there? And according to Consumers Reports, the Audi Q4 e-tron is literally one of their worst, and it's below the average predicted reliability ratings. Worst part is, original models, they continue going on and on. These problems that initially you thought would get worked out are still happening, and a lot of owners are still struggling with driving these Q4s. They're trying to trade them in. Honestly, most owners of the Q4 who lease their vehicles are going, whew, that was close, because others who actually financed them and bought them outright meant that they're struggling with ongoing issues like infotainment troubles, charging problems, warning lights, MMI crashes, inconsistencies in the charging capabilities, and driver assistance bugs like heads-up display and lane departure features just never quite worked perfectly. Now, as I already mentioned, Volkswagen and the ID.4 isn't a great vehicle either, and this shares the same MEB platform with the ID.4, which provides either rear-wheel drive single motor or all-wheel drive in the dual motor setup. You either get 201 horsepower or a whopping 295 horsepower. You can get that out of a Civic Type R these days. And with a range of as much as 250 miles or about 400 kilometers, it's marginal at best. It's certainly not record-breaking, and it doesn't compete with the long-range products that we're finding over by Tesla. It's just a vehicle that I can't believe people are buying. Even if you want to save a buck, you could go over to Volkswagen Land if you really had to have the product. But quite honestly, internal combustion engines have been around a long time, and these manufacturers who tried to fast track these electric vehicles are struggling with the problems that we are seeing today with many of these Audis. I still can't believe that people continue to buy these Audi Q4 e-tron vehicles. The number 4 goes to Mercedes-Benz. Now, I do like some of the Mercedes-Benz, but I do feel, in my own personal opinion and my experience, that they're not built like they used to be. They're a shell of what they used to be. They're pushed together with clips and fittings that all pop loose and starts to squeak and rattle with some age and some miles, and they just don't feel to have the solidity quality of vehicles like the 211 or the 204 back in the day. Rather, they're just vehicles that truck along. They have the great looks, they have all of the features, but the quality and solidity is not quite there. That being said, the EQB is the vehicle that I put on the list. Now you're taking the worst of the worst. You're taking an electrified version of as one of their entry-level vehicles. The GLB, which is their little boxy SUV, they go and converted that and have a product called the EQB, which is essentially their small little diminutive electric vehicle. There was a big problem with these vehicles from 2024 to 2026 with some potential fire hazards related to the batteries. Allegedly, over 12,000 vehicles were recalled due to a fire risk. The root cause was internal faults, and we've also heard similar issues with many of the products over the 4xEs and the Jeeps, as well as even BMW when they had their plug-in hybrids. The 45E and the X5 also had some of those problems with their alleged Samsung batteries back in the day, internal faults shorting out and creating overheating conditions and potential fire. Mercedes-Benz allegedly warned people to park their vehicles outside, don't charge over 80%, and all I can say is here we go again. You're telling me I can't park my brand new $80,000 vehicle in my garage to protect it from all the hooliganism that goes on today to keep it sheltered from the elements? If I got to park it a block away from my house just to resist the possibility of burning my house down, well, then we have a problem. And that's definitely a vehicle I would steer away from. So initially, Mercedes escalated things to a software patch, something that would limit the overcharge. And then eventually it looked like it became just a full-out battery replacement. Sadly, it doesn't begin and end with some of these battery issues. You know, electronic gremlins, electrical glitches, you know, all of the other lane keep assist programs and all of the sensors that are on board are nothing short of problematic in modern day Mercedes, in my personal experience, as we've seen in the C-Class, and this seems to transfer over to many of their models like this. Squeaky front ends, electrical gremlins, faults, codes. And what we're seeing with vehicles like the EQB, fortunately, there's no PCV issues to deal with there, but all of those electrified problems and all of those sensors and driver assistance programs do continue to be slightly problematic. So while some people see the benefit of the range up to 425 kilometers, you get a couple different drives, the EQB 300, which gives you about 225 horsepower. You can get up to almost 285 horsepower with the EQB 350. The 425 kilometers is not bad. It gets you around and it's very functional. But again, worrying about having to park your vehicle outside with a modern luxury vehicle just doesn't sit well with me. And with all of these electrified problems, not just with Mercedes and Audi and Porsche and all of them, it's still struggle to understand why people are trying to fast track getting on board with some of these electric vehicles, thinking they're going to save $1, but they're spending $1,000 trying to mitigate these other issues. 5 is the Range Rover. Yeah, for 2022 to 2026, the Range Rover full size. You get a couple engines, the 3-liter inline-6 mild hybrid drive, or you can get BMW's 4.4-liter twin turbo V8, of course. Now with that vehicle, it's the N63 or a variant of that. And we all know what's been going on with the N63. While it has been vastly improved, it's much better than the earlier generations. You still have battery draw issues. You still have potential oil consumption related to the hot V and some of the extra heat that you're getting in the top of the drive. You're getting the vast majority of the electrical gremlins that you had in previous models of a lot of these vehicles in the Range Rover lineup. Air ride suspension failures where it could cost you $3,000 to $4,000 per corner. You come out and the ass is dragging on the ground. Yeah, that's the air ride system. And then you ultimately have to change out the bags and do more troubleshooting, and it's just more time in the shop. Now, while they're luxury vehicles, you do feel like you have to actually have the income of the King and Queen of England, realistically, to be able to continue to afford these beasts. Electrical faults related to the door and other sensors means that you're constantly guessing, watching, trying to troubleshoot, trying to plug in your OBD2 code reader, try to understand what these new problems are that pop up almost every single week. We also don't want to forget the traditional BMW challenges like oil leaks, coolant leaks, of course, oil filter housing problems, and a lot of those issues that we're aware of on the BMW side just transfer over. I mean, with the V8 engine that they extracted right from the BMW parts bin, you're going to have everything that goes with that too. Coolant leaks, plastic fittings that go and start to leak, and water pumps and thermostats, and all of those parts that tend to go between 50, 60, 70,000 miles means you're constantly dancing. But that's okay. There is some good news because the rest of the vehicle won't last 60,000 miles from my experience. So good luck with that. Check out classifieds and you'll see how many of these are actually over 50,000 miles. I think you'll be surprised. Number 6, is a vehicle in today's day and age, where space seems to be constrained and there's so many great options out there for luxury vehicles. It still shocks me that people continue to buy the 7 Series BMW. Now, sure, you could get a great engine. You get the B58 in some applications, such as in the 740i. And I always say, wherever you can get a B58, at least the drivetrain's going for you. As well, the ZF 8-speed auto is a good drive. So in the 740, at least the drive mechanical elements are reasonable. That being said, the all-wheel drive systems, we know there is a potential problem with the transfer cases where allegedly things are starting to fail just outside of warranty. So buyer beware with a lot of those transfer case issues. But even worse is the 760, where you're now dealing with that traditional 4.4-liter twin-turbo V8 engine, hot V. Again, you're dealing with more of those issues that you're likely going to see in Range Rover and some of the older BMWs. Oil consumption, potential valve guide wear, turbos, plastics under the hood, water pumps, thermostats, oil lines, cooling lines, you name it, there are troubles just lurking. Now, they're not overly brutally unreliable, but they're so complex that to tear in to do any kind of maintenance is going to cost you thousands of dollars every single time. Now, don't fear, BMW has been getting better over the last number of years, and we've heard consumer reports putting them much higher. They're snaking their way up the ladders, and of course, even outdoing the brands like Acura and Honda. That being said, these are not the models that are getting them up there. It's the B58 and the 3-4 series cars that are elevating BMW, as well as the B48s with their Turbo 4s. These engines are built for luxury and power, but that comes at a cost. Electronics, gremlins, glitches, and the sheer magnitude of this vehicle, it's an absolute behemoth. It's actually shocking people still buy these, to be honest. Now, number 7, we're talking about a Lexus. I can't believe this even makes the list, and most would say every Lexus is reliable, and I would say largely. If you go and you grab an engine picker and you pull that engine out of the front of the LX600, the rest of the vehicle is ridiculously reliable, and I've always stood by that. Lexus creates a great product. Toyota has always focused on reliability, and that's one of their bread and butters. The problem, unfortunately, though, is the older LX models, like the 570s, were great. They had the naturally aspirated V8 from the Tundra, and they were bulletproof. But things have changed. They're trying to advance this technology with twin turbo. Now they have this 3.4-liter V6, and let's be honest, the recalls have been astounding. With the Tundra and the LX600, now the GX550, and you mark my words, likely the Toyota Sequoia is going to be added to this list. The LX600, there's just too many unknowns right now. It's not as proven, it's not as reliable, it's not as predictable as the older 5.7. Now, there may be a time where it is, and this may actually wind up on one of my recommended lists at some point. But for now, it's not. And because of all these engine issues, it shocks me that people don't steer away from that specific model. I can't believe it. It's gorgeous, it's beautiful, but with well over 6 figures to buy into one of these vehicles, you could literally be left with a beautiful, shiny lawn ornament. So the LX600 is a Lexus I can't believe people are buying today. I'd be waiting it out at least until I got the total green light to see that no more of those recalls and that they really got to the source of the problem. And it was more than just that particulate floating around in the engine that allegedly caused these problems, and they figured it out. Found out, aha, that's the moment of truth, then you might find me driving one of these. Till then, I can't believe people even buy the LX600. And the next one is a manufacturer. It's not a shock that they're virtually out of business. Nissan, Infiniti, they haven't been doing well. They've been incentivizing everything. And sure, the cars like the Nissan Z cars are a lot of fun. I'm glad to see the Nismo now coming out with a 6-speed manual. That is actually a fun enthusiast car, and I could get behind that. I love the GTR, the R35s. I mean, they're all great cars. But the Ultima, trash. Their Rogue, trash. But now we're talking about Infiniti and the QX50 or the QX55. Oh God, what are we doing here with the variable compression engine, 2-liter turbocharge, with a series of joints and links? What's wrong with a standard connecting rod? That's only been used for decades. But people feel like, okay, hey, this is innovative. They have this great new innovative variable compression engine. Guess what? Let's throw turbocharging and direct injection at it too. And you know what? The cherry on the cake? Let's put a CVT transmission in there too. What? And there's no shocker why these brands are struggling, why these 1.5s in the Rogues or the 2 liters in the QX50 and 55 are struggling for sales. I was at the mall the other day and they had one sitting in the mall and they were advertising it and you could log on with the QR code. And I remember looking at this and thinking, hey, wow, look at their lease incentives. I can't believe nobody comes even close to that. Then I went over to Toyota to see what they were doing in Lexus. Their incentives weren't even half. It wasn't even near year. It was almost like, okay, it's almost worth buying an Infiniti. See, but that's the trick. And people are still buying these because they're buying them based on these incentives. Infiniti and Nissan are cleverly offering such undeniable incentives to buy their products. But the CVTs that these vehicles come equipped with, once that warranty comes and goes, you could be stuck with a $7,000 repair bill just to get that sorted out. On top of it, we know there's a huge recall right now for these variable compression engines, bearings, engine failures. Wow, this is just catastrophic. With all of these major issues from engine to transmission, what's left? Electrics? Oh, yeah, there's problems there too. Infotainment and other electrical gremlins. Why are people buying these vehicles? I think people need to speak with their wallets and say, look, we're good. Until you create a product that we can get behind that's reliable, performs well, and is very competitive with the rest of the industry, we're not buying it. And with all that said, maybe you just want a simple little truck. The best trucks that you can find on the market and the best new cars you can find in the luxury car segment right there. Check it out. You're going to love it. Hope to see each and every one of you real soon, everybody. Talk to you then. Bye-bye.